Yo, what up? New books on my desk. This stuff is preparing for teaching English in China, although I'm first going to be a student of Chinese and then later a professor teaching university classes over there, but teaching English in a formal university lecture format. So we'll see what's up with that in due course. The subject of this video is not that serious, but it is, I think, very useful for many of my viewers. That's already an interesting contrast between what's serious and what's useful. But I mean, some of the videos on this channel are very, very, very serious in tone. I had this recent interview with Zahria. You can see it as a video a few days ago, or you can download it as a podcast. It's like an hour and a half long. We both laugh and cry during that conversation. Both of us like briefly break down in tears. There was like a long silence after that. And I mean, that's real. That one video, like, to be honest with you, I think there's more real content in that video about veganism, about activism, about life and everything else. I think there's more content in that one video than some people have on their whole channel. And I'm really proud that we made that video. And she's not a close friend of mine. She's not. I mean, we got that real. That's the first conversation we ever had together. So some of the stuff I had in my channel, you can respect it or check it. But this video is responding to a question I got from a much younger female viewer, and she lives in Canada, part of Canada I'm basically familiar with, and she's struggling with something I think a lot of my viewers struggle with at every age, which is how to deal with questions that are basically hostile, sometimes kind of demeaning and insulting questions from non-vegans, including her own mother, including her mom. Now, so to say, in giving her advice, she asked for my advice, she gives some specific pointers. What I have to say is, I think, useful, but it's not that serious. A lot of what goes on in these sorts of conversations, it really boils down to understanding the function of the question as opposed to focusing on the particular words that are being said. So for me, as an adult man in Western culture, someone might come up to me. All right, I'm going to give examples that are specific to my life. Someone might ask me a question about Buddhism. They might ask a particular question, and let's say they phrase it in terms of, someone walks up to me and says, "How dare you criticize Bhikkhu Bodhi?" So I used to be a scholar of Buddhism. I have written critiques of Bhikkhu Bodhi. They're actually very polite critiques. So Bhikkhu Bodhi is a particular Buddhist monk. And this person may ask me a question, but the real function of the question, apart from the wording, is that this person is really asking, do I know what I'm talking about? They may also be asking, are my intentions good? Was my heart in the right place when I wrote this critique of a well-known Buddhist monk, right? And my answer to that question might be completely disregarding the particular words, the particular thing they're asking about. I might say back to them, I've met Bhikkhu Bodhi. I talked to him for quite a few hours. And the person very likely is going to say back to that, oh, really? Oh, wow, okay. And then I might say, I remember the first time I sent him an email. Tell the anecdote about that. I might say, I remember how I went to his Buddhist temple under these conditions and met him and talked to him. I might tell some anecdotes about that. I might provide information about me and who I am and my motives, and information that demonstrates that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm acting in good faith, that doesn't answer their question in any way. And yet, it really responds to the function of the question they were asking me, because I recognize the reason why they're asking me that question, and I'm responding to that. Now, I mean, sometimes the reasons why people ask you these questions can be nasty. Sometimes they're just asking you a question to insult you. So another part of my life, a lot of what I've been doing has been the study of languages, right? And I've studied some obscure languages like Laotian. I've also studied language like Pali. Pali is even more obscure. Okay, that's debatable. Which one is more obscure, Laotian or Pali? Laotian is the language of the Lao people in Southeast Asia. So let's say someone comes up to me and asks me a question, and regardless of the particular wording, the real function of the question is to insinuate that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I didn't really learn the language, that I didn't really study the language, or that I don't know as much as someone who has a PhD in that language. Now, again, this actually, I'm going to come back to veganism. This is pretty closely parallel to the type of challenges you get on veganism. And, you know, it's really worthwhile to respond to those things in a way that's self-confident, but that recognizes the problem. You know, if people do that to me, it's been a long time since someone did that to me. It depends on the context, but I might say responding to the function of the question, not to the wording. I might disregard completely the actual question asked me. I might say, yeah, you know, it's really hard. It's really hard to learn the Lao language. That's how I might start, is acknowledging it's not easy, and I don't think I'm the greatest master in the world. Might just recognize by saying it's really hard. And likewise, I'm going to come back to veganism. You can respond to questions about veganism by acknowledging, yeah, you know, it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard to learn the Lao language. I remember living in a grass hut on the Mekong River. The huts are actually made of bamboo. We say grass hut. It's a bamboo hut. Sleeping under a mosquito net with no electricity and having a flashlight and studying, you know, a textbook that I had made out of photocopies and computer printouts from like bits and pieces of like U.S. Army manuals on the language. I had some materials created by Christian missionaries. Like, this is an obscure enough language that you're not using like real textbooks a lot of the time. You're using bits and pieces of things that you've put together. Like, yeah, you know what? It's really hard. And there are very few people who are real experts in the language. And I might tell some other anecdotes. I might tell anecdotes. Yeah, you know what? I remember one time I was standing on the banks of the Mekong River. I had just been doing some push-ups while waiting for this boat to pick me up. And these guys came up to me in Lao, speaking in the Lao language, and they were really impressed with my chest hair. I've been doing push-ups. Because we were waiting for hours for that boat, by the way. I don't do this from waiting for 5 minutes for the boat was delayed for a long, long time, which is also very typical of Laos. And they asked me in Lao, did you grow this hair yourself, or did you pay money for it? That was the question. I found that so hilarious. And I can tell an anecdote about the answers I gave in Lao and how I struggled to put together the vocabulary to come with an answer. Now, that might not answer the question put to me at all. But the function of the question was this person insulting me or challenging me or wanting to know, do I really know what I'm talking about? Am I really sincere? Am I really real? And I'm coming back in a way that's really real. And I'm coming back in a way that maybe acknowledges underlying problems or contradictions. So that's how I've gone through my life. And I think that approach works quite well with Americans. I'd say it probably works well with Americans, works well with Chinese people, does not work very well with the British as a significant contrast. I've already complained a lot about British culture on this channel, but that kind of honesty is really not always rewarded with the British, so you can observe that. I think it works pretty well with the Swedes, works pretty well with the Finnish and the Norwegians. It works pretty well with the Germans, not as well as the Americans. But that's, when I talk about keeping it real on this channel, that is one method of keeping it real. And I do not respond to those challenges by saying to someone, who do you think you are? Or don't you know who I think I am? I think that's really counterproductive, and you just escalate hostilities. So coming back to veganism, when people challenge you in this way on veganism, it's not weak to acknowledge the problems you're being presented with. It's strong, you know? And a lot of the time, these are people who don't want to hear a lecture about animal rights. They don't. You have to recognize the function of the question they're asking you. So, you know, she gives example of, what about the people picking the plants on the farms? What about the rights of the farm laborers? Now, I have made several videos about this. I'll provide a link below this video to one that I think is still good, talking about that question. Have you actually been to a farm? Do you actually think about farm laborers? Which is it's a meaningful question. I could easily give a 1-hour lecture on it right now, or if someone asked me. But in real life, if someone challenges me with that question, they don't want to hear a 1-hour lecture. That's not the function of the question. They're not sincerely interested to that extent. They are testing your sincerity, the goodness of your intent, whether or not you know what you're talking about, and other things. They're testing your character, really, and they're only secondarily interested in veganism. So if specific example, someone says to you, well, what about the exploitation of farm workers? You can say right back to them, the same way I said about, learning the Lao language is hard. You know what? Studying with a Buddhist monk in a monastery is hard. Yeah, you know what? I know about that. I've had that experience. So when I write a criticism of it, it's coming from a place of something really real, something I care about, something I've experienced with, something I've done. So yeah, I am in a position to talk about that language, to talk about Buddhism. This is who I am. I'm going to testify. Yeah, you know what? It's hard. It's hard to make a difference in labor rights for migrant workers working on farms. It's a big problem. Yeah, I agree. You know what? That's not a reason to drink the milk out of a cow's titty. And if you can say that to someone straight, looking in their eyes, like you've just pointed out the absurdity of the connection of these things, but you've acknowledged, you know what? You make a good point. I'm concerned about labor rights on farms in Southern Ontario. Back when I was living in Southern Ontario, we had farm laborers from Nicaragua coming to work illegally, picking fruit on farms in Southern Ontario, doing other, the tobacco farms, everything else. I don't know now if it's still Nicaraguans. I've heard lately a lot about Filipinos working on fruit farms in Ontario. But anyway, it's probably all of the above. Yeah, there are real questions of illegal migrant laborers, questions of how well they treat, even Canadian citizens who work on those farms too, and so on. Sure, you know what? That's an issue. But that is not a reason to get down on your hands and knees and suck the milk out of a cow's udder. Is it, homeboy? Like I said, this video is not that serious, but it's useful. This is really what you're doing in that kind of short conversation. If somebody is pointing out to you a contradiction within veganism, you can acknowledge that. You can own that. You can say, yeah, you know what? This is a problem. Veganism doesn't solve every problem in the world. I had a good one. Jake Eames was writing to me. He's really concerned about people dumping plastic into the oceans. It's a totally legit problem. He's vegan, whatever. But, veganism can't claim to eliminate all plastic garbage in the world. Veganism is something really positive. It solves some problems. It doesn't solve others. I think the other dynamics that are involved here do have to do with gender and age and authority. Back when I ran a vegan blog, I gave advice to and I spoke to a lot of females who were writing into me about the extreme disrespect they got from coworkers, like maybe from other students at university. But you know what? No, it was mostly like coworkers, family members, even their own boyfriends, like whatever. The disrespect they as women got from other women about veganism was really extreme and really nasty. And for men, for grown men especially, one of the natural limits is that there's always the issue of resorting to violence. Like one of the reasons why grown men are civil is like, well, look, do you want to take this outside? Like, are you actually trying to start a fist fight with me? That is always there for men. And it's not nice, but in a sense, people behave more rationally. They stay on their P's and Q's a bit more because the shadow of that hangs over the whole conversation. Some women in Western culture are not even aware of that. Like they don't know, when you have a situation with both men and women involved and women are really being disrespectful, they may not realize that they're forcing two men to get into a conflict, that they're escalating a conflict, that they're forcing a fist fight. This woman is just freaking out and she thinks that's cool. She thinks there are no consequences. But then the men are expected to lay hands on each other to settle the issue. It's broody and it's brutal and nasty and terrible, but that is a gendered issue of these kinds of conflicts. And I do think in a lot of situations, women will just take it really far. They'll really disrespect each other, try to make each other cry. attack each other or whatever. And when you're a young woman, I think that can be a real problem, is that level of disrespect. But what's the way to respond to that? Recognize the function of the question that's being asked to you rather than responding to the particular words. If the function is just to disrespect you, if it's just to say, you ain't shit, if it's just to say you don't know what you're talking about, you can respond to that by looking back at the person and saying, you know what, I may not be an expert. You know what, I'm not a cancer expert. I'm not a cancer researcher. You know what, I may not know what I'm talking about, but I'm doing the best I can. If you can look someone in the eyes and say that really sincerely, when they've disrespected you, they've said, oh, well, you can still eat meat and not get cancer or whatever. You can look back at their eyes and say, you know what? I'm not an expert on cancer. I don't know. But here's what I do know, okay? I can make a positive difference in the world by eating less meat, by eating absolutely no meat at all. And that's what I'm going to do, okay? Because I'm trying to do something good. I'm trying to make a positive difference no matter how small. If they still come at you, if they still disrespect you more, then you can just after you've said that, you can point out the contrast. You can say, well, you know what? I've just told you. I'm trying to do something positive. Are you? Right now, you attacking me. Are you trying to do something positive? What is this about? Okay? Maybe you're 100% right and I'm 100% wrong about cancer. I don't want to talk about that because I'm not the expert. Maybe you're 100% right about the exploitation of migrant farm laborers. I'm not a human rights lawyer. I'm not involved with human rights cases for, minimum wage workers on farms. That's not what I'm about. But I'm just telling you, I'm trying to do something positive. Are you?